I sat down on the white-painted wooden chair, the familiar creak beneath me, echoing countless family dinners from years past. The kitchen smelled of pot roast and garlic bread, a warm, heavy aroma that once meant home, safety, laughter, love. Tonight, it hung in the air like a ghost. Across the table, my parents, Michael and Linda, sat stiffly, their faces tight with something unspoken. My twin brothers, Ethan and Caleb, sprawled in their chairs, their 26-year-old frames too big for the space. Their smirks too sharp for the moment. I was 32, the eldest, the one who'd held this family together, or so I'd thought. Mom cleared her throat, her hands smoothing the napkin in her lap. "Reagan, we want to talk to you about an important decision," she said, her voice carefully composed, like she'd rehearsed it. I set my fork down, the clink against the plate louder than it should have been. Dad shifted in his seat, his graying hair catching the light, his steady tone missing its usual warmth. "We've finalized our will," he continued, "and we want you to hear it from us now, so there's no confusion later." Ethan leaned back, crossing his arms, a smug smirk curling his lips. "To put it simply, everything goes to us," he said, his voice dripping with triumph. I froze. "What?" Caleb, his twin, repeated it, his tone light, like he was announcing the weather. "Mom and Dad are leaving the house, the beach condo, all their assets to us. You get nothing." The room fell silent, save for the faint hum of traffic from the quiet suburban street outside. My chest tightened, a sharp ache blooming beneath my ribs. I turned to Mom, searching her face for a crack in this nightmare, a denial, anything. She gave a small, firm nod, her eyes steady. "We think this is for the best," she said, clutching that napkin tighter. "You have a stable career, a solid income. Ethan and Caleb are still finding their way. They need more support." Dad stared at his water glass, avoiding me, his silence a brick wall. Pain surged through me, hot and jagged, mingling with a rising anger I couldn't swallow. Everything I'd done for them, 10 years of it, flashed before me. The $1,900 I sent every month for their mortgage, the medical bills I'd covered when Dad's back gave out, the countless times I'd bailed Ethan and Caleb out of their reckless messes. I'd worked late nights, skipped vacations, poured my life into this family. And now? Nothing. "So, after everything I've done, you've decided I don't deserve anything?" My voice wavered, despite my fight to keep it steady. The hurt bled through, raw and undeniable. Mom sighed, her eyes narrowing with disappointment. "Reagan, you always make everything about money," Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "You're overreacting, as usual." Caleb leaned forward, his grin sharp. "Come on, you're fine. You don't need it." Their words hit like stones, each one heavier than the last. I clenched my hands under the table, nails digging into my palms. The pot roast smell, once comforting, turned sour in my throat. This wasn't just about a will. This was them saying I didn't matter, not unless I was paying. I looked around the table, at the faces I'd loved, fought for, sacrificed for. Mom's composed mask, Dad's averted gaze, Ethan and Caleb's triumphant smirks. They didn't see me. They never had. The kitchen, with its faded wallpaper and chipped mugs, felt foreign now. A stage for a play I didn't belong in. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of betrayal. This was my family, but tonight, they'd drawn a line, and I was on the wrong side of it. The kitchen air thickened, pressing against my skin as I stared at them, Michael, Linda, Ethan, Caleb. The hum of traffic outside was a distant pulse, drowned by the roar in my ears. "So, after everything I've done, you've decided I don't deserve anything?" I said again, my voice trembling but holding. Mom's sigh cut through, sharp with that familiar disappointment. "Reagan, you always make everything about money," she said, her tone a reprimand I'd heard too many times. I swallowed hard, the sting of her words piercing deeper. "It's not about money," I shot back, fighting to keep my voice calm. It's about fairness, about how I've been there every time you needed me. But now, because I'm independent, because I don't rely on you, I have no value to this family. Ethan let out a short, barking laugh, shaking his head. You're being dramatic. No one forced you to help. You just liked playing the martyr. Caleb smirked, amusement flickering in his eyes. Maybe you thought if you threw enough cash at us, Mom and Dad would finally love you as much as they love us. His words slapped me, sharp and cold across the face. I turned to Dad, waiting for him to correct Caleb, to say something, anything. He just stared at his glass, fingers tracing the rim, silent. Mom's lips pressed into a thin line, her napkin now a crumpled ball. Nothing. They said nothing. And in that silence, it hit me. A brutal, crystalline truth. I was their bank, not their daughter. 10 years of mortgage payments, medical bills, Ethan's failed ventures, Caleb's car. I'd been their safety net, not their family. Pain swelled in my throat, a lump I couldn't choke down. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. All right, I said, my voice even, though my heart hammered. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what's that? I pushed my chair back, the scrape against the tile, loud in the stillness. If that's your decision, then I have one of my own. I stood, my legs shaky but firm. From now on, don't expect anything from me. Their faces froze, Mom's eyes widening, Dad's head snapping up, Ethan and Caleb's smirks faltering. I turned away, the pot roast scent clinging to me, empty now, stripped of meaning. My footsteps echoed as I walked out, past the faded photos on the wall, the chipped counter I'd scrubbed as a kid. No one stopped me. No one called my name. The door clicked shut behind me, a final note in a song I didn't want to hear anymore. Outside, the night air was crisp, biting at my cheeks. I felt it then, a burning heat rising to my temples, a fury I hadn't let myself name. Driving home, I didn't turn on the radio. Silence was what I needed, a blank slate to process the unraveling. Why was I even surprised? Hadn't I always known, deep down, that to them, I was just a checkbook? The house I'd grown up in faded in my rear view, its warmth a lie I'd clung to too long. Everything had changed, and I'd made it happen. My apartment was quiet, a sanctuary of shadows pierced only by the glow of my phone screen. I collapsed onto the couch, the cushions sinking beneath me, my hands trembling as I unlocked it. The conversation replayed, Mom's sigh, Ethan's laugh, Caleb's jab, each word a blade twisting deeper. I opened my banking app, the numbers staring back like a brutal ledger of my life. $1,900 every month to my parents' mortgage, $1,200 more whenever Ethan or Caleb whined about cash. A decade of it, etched in cold digits. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I'd paid for their house, their health, their mistakes, Ethan's tuition flops, Caleb's social media car. And for what? To be cut out, dismissed, mocked? Mom said I was successful, didn't need help. But what about them? Without me, could they even keep that roof over their heads? My finger hovered over the automatic transfer section, a lifeline I'd tied myself to. For years, I'd accepted this burden, called it duty, but this was their choice. They didn't need me. They'd made that clear. 1 second, 2, I pressed cancel. A notification popped up. Recurring payment successfully stopped. A wave crashed over me. Anger, bitterness, but also something lighter, something new. Relief. I set the phone down, sinking deeper into the couch, the weight I'd carried for too long lifting from my shoulders. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake, replaying the past, vacations I'd skipped to cover their bills, late nights working overtime to send Ethan money, sacrifices I'd made thinking they mattered. But when I needed just one sign, 1 ounce of gratitude, they couldn't give it. The silence stretched, unfamiliar but sharp. I'd been their anchor, their crutch, and now I'd let go. What did that leave me with? The apartment felt too still, the hum of the fridge too loud. I stood, pacing to the window, the city lights flickering beyond. I'd poured so much into them, believing it tied us together. But it didn't. It just tied me down. Canceling those payments wasn't just about money. It was cutting a cord I'd let strangle me. My hand steadied, the trembling gone. I wasn't their bank anymore. I wasn't their fixer. I was Reagan, 32, alone in my quiet space, and for the first time, that felt like enough. The emptiness crept in, a hollow echo of what I'd lost. Not them, but the version of me who thought they'd ever see me. But beneath it, a spark flickered. Freedom, maybe. I didn't know what came next, but I knew this. I'd never go back. The morning after I canceled the payments, my phone rang, shattering the apartment's fragile silence. I hesitated, the screen flashing, "Mom." Bracing myself, I answered. "Reagan, did you cancel this month's payment?" Linda's voice sliced through, sharp with worry. She tried to mask as disappointment. I took a deep breath, steadying my nerves. "Yes, Mom, because I realized I don't have to do this anymore." Silence stretched, taut and heavy, before she snapped back. "What do you mean? Family supports each other? You know we rely on that money for the bills." I clenched my jaw, keeping my tone even. "Mom, family only matters to you when I'm paying for everything. I've helped for years, but in the end, I still don't mean anything to you." Her voice rose, trembling with indignation. "You're being selfish, Reagan. Why are you acting this way just because of the will? Everything isn't about money." I laughed, a dry, bitter sound. "Not about money? I was the one footing the bills for this entire family. If it's not about money, why don't you ask Ethan and Caleb to take care of you instead?" She went quiet, the line crackling with her frustration. I could picture her, lips pursed, eyes flashing, angry at being cornered. "I can't believe you're acting like this," she finally said, her voice cold. "This isn't the Reagan I raised." I closed my eyes, the weight in my chest shifting. "Mom, this is me, but you never really saw me." I hung up before she could twist it further, my hand trembling as I set the phone down. She'd call again. I knew it. Dad, too. Maybe Ethan and Caleb with their venom. But for once, I didn't feel the pull to answer. Days later, the calls turned relentless. Dad's gruff voice left messages. "Reagan, call us back." Ethan texted, "You're a joke." I ignored them, letting the silence rebuild my walls. Then, late one night, I came home to a nightmare. My apartment door was sealed shut, industrial foam hardening over the frame and handle. I touched it, cold and solid, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. This wasn't a prank. It was deliberate, malicious. I grabbed my phone, pulling up the hallway security footage. Fast forwarding, I saw him. Caleb, in a hoodie and cap, his stride unmistakable. He smirked, spraying foam into every crevice, sealing me out of my own home. Rage ignited, hot and blinding. My hands shook as I called the police, voice steady despite the storm inside. When they arrived, I handed over the footage. One officer nodded, watching Caleb's smug face on the screen. "Do you want to press charges?" he asked. I gripped my phone tighter, a chill running down my spine. If I let this go, it'd escalate. Caleb's anger wasn't just petty, it was dangerous. "I want him held accountable," I said, my gaze firm. The officer jotted it down, and I felt a shift, power, mine again. The next day, my phone rang again. Dad this time. I picked up, bracing for it. "Reagan, your brother got called in by the police," Michael barked, his voice harsh. "How could you do this to your own family?" I stayed calm, though my pulse raced. "Caleb vandalized my property, Dad. If he doesn't want charges, he needs to pay for the damages." His tone dropped, incredulous. "How much?" I didn't hesitate. $3,000? He sputtered. How could you extort your own brother like this? I let out a dry chuckle. It's not extortion, Dad. It's consequences. By morning, my account pinged. A $3,000 transfer with a note. I never want to see you again. I read it, feeling nothing but a grim satisfaction. Caleb's spite couldn't touch me now. I'd drawn a line, and they'd crossed it. First with the will, now with this. The phone was gone, cleaned up by a locksmith I'd called, but the mark lingered in my mind. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my submission. And I was done giving either. The silence didn't last. 2 days after Caleb's payment, my phone buzzed with a message from a cousin. Reagan, is this true? People say you abandoned your family. I frowned, unease creeping in. Another text followed, from an old friend. How could you cut off your parents and brothers like this? I opened Facebook, and there it was, Linda's post, a long, tear-stained lie. She'd written that I'd turned my back on them in their time of need, that I was selfish, money-obsessed, leaving my aging parents and struggling brothers with nothing. Comments poured in. So sad when kids forget where they came from. Parents sacrifice everything, and this is the thanks? Anger flared, hot in my chest. She'd left out the truth. $1,900 monthly for their mortgage, tuition for Ethan, cash for Caleb's vanity projects. No mention of the will or Caleb sealing my door. I scrolled, the stranger's judgment stinging, but her rewrite burned more. They'd made me the villain, erased my decade of support. I sat in silence, the apartment dim around me. Should I let it go, let them spin their tale? I'd swallowed their manipulation too long. I opened my app, fingers flying. If my family wants this public, let me tell the truth, I wrote. I listed it all, every dollar I'd sent, the mortgage I'd half paid, the bills I'd covered, Caleb's vandalism that forced me to call the police. I didn't turn my back on them, I typed. They never saw me as family unless I was paying. Now I'm standing up for myself. I hit post, my heart racing but steady. Within hours, it exploded. Relatives asking questions, an aunt texting, "Did you really support them that much?" Some called Linda out, shocked by the gaps in her story. Mom called instantly, her voice a furious rasp. "Reagan, what the hell did you just do?" I stayed calm, though my grip tightened. "I told the truth, Mom. If you can tell your version, so can I." She gasped, breathless. "You're humiliating this family. Your father's so ashamed he won't leave the house. Have you thought about Ethan and Caleb?" I clenched my phone. Did they think about me when Caleb trashed my home? When I was breaking my back to pay your bills? Silence. Then her voice turned icy. "You're destroying us. If you do this, don't expect to come back. We're no longer family." I closed my eyes, breathing deep. "Mom, you destroyed this family, not me," I said, and hung up. No tears came, just relief, sharp and clean. That call was the last I'd hear her voice. The messages stopped. Ethan's taunts, Dad's pleas, all gone. They'd cut me out, but I'd already let go. I stood on my balcony, the night breeze cool against my skin, the city humming below. I'd lost them, but maybe they'd never been mine to lose. The post lingered, online, a line in the sand. Some believed me, some didn't, but it didn't matter. I'd spoken my piece, stripped their lies bare. The apartment felt lighter, the silence a gift I hadn't expected. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. I was Reagan, 32, free from their weight, and that truth was louder than their noise. Months later, I stood in Florence, the cobblestone streets firm beneath my feet, the air thick with espresso and history. I'd thrown myself into work after the fallout, nights at the office, a big project finished early, and earned a promotion. The raise sat in my account, unclaimed by anyone but me. I'd booked this trip on a whim, a dream I'd buried under their needs. Now, nothing held me back. The Arno River glittered at sunset, terracotta rooftops glowing, and I felt alive, untethered. I wandered narrow alleyways, marveling at Renaissance paintings in hushed museums, their colors vivid against my gray past. One afternoon, I sat in a cafe near Piazza della Signoria, a cappuccino steaming in my hands. "You seem to really like this place," a voice said. I looked up, meeting warm brown eyes. Alex Carter, 34, a New Yorker with light hair and an easy smile. "I think I just fell in love with this city," I replied, smiling back. He pulled out a chair, sitting like we'd known each other forever. "Me too. Third time back," he said, his voice calm, steady. We talked about his interior design work, his love for European architecture, my newfound freedom. No pressure, no expectations, just words flowing over gelato and the clink of wine glasses. Days blurred into walks along the river, markets bursting with color, sunsets painting the sky gold. Alex didn't ask about my family, didn't probe. He saw me, Reagan, 32, laughing over spilled espresso. Not a wallet, not a fixer. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt so light. One evening, on a rooftop terrace, I gazed at the city lights, their glow softening the edges of my scars. Alex leaned against the railing, sipping wine. "You look happy here," he said. I nodded, the breeze brushing my skin. "I am." I'd once believed happiness hinged on them, on giving enough, paying enough, being enough. But here, under the Italian sky, I saw it. I didn't need their love. I could build my own joy, brick by brick, moment by moment. Florence was my rebirth. The promotion, the trip, Alex. They weren't rewards. They were proof. I wasn't the Reagan who'd begged for scraps of affection. I was me, sipping rich red wine, tasting fresh pasta, walking streets that whispered possibility. Alex glanced at me, his smile quiet. "If you ever want company exploring more, I'm around." I hesitated, then nodded. "I'd like that." He didn't push, just stayed, present, real. Back in my hotel, I stood by the window, the city sprawling below. The weight of their will, their anger, their lies, it had faded into the terracotta haze. I'd carried them too long, but now I carried only myself. And that was enough. Florence didn't erase the past, but it showed me a future, one I'd choose, not inherit. Christmas crept up, the first I'd face without them, and I decided to host a gathering in my apartment. The space transformed, twinkling lights draped over the windows, laughter spilling from the kitchen as friends arrived with wine and desserts. Aunt Susan, Linda's cousin, came early, her arms full of homemade cookies and a hug that felt like home. At 60, her gray-streaked hair framed a face lined with understanding. "I'm so proud of you, Reagan," she said, her voice warm as I welcomed her in. I smiled, pouring her a glass of wine. "You're the only one in the family who's ever said that to me." She looked at me, her eyes softening with a mix of sadness and strength. "I just wish they'd realized your worth before it was too late." I didn't reply, just led her inside where the room buzzed with chatter. Friends filled the couch, their voices overlapping in easy joy, no forced smiles, no hidden demands. I'd once thought this holiday without Michael, Linda, Ethan, and Caleb would leave me hollow. But as the night unfolded, I felt full, lighter than any Christmas before. A few days earlier, a text from Susan had stirred the past. "Reagan, I know you don't care about them anymore, but your parents are struggling," she'd written. "Michael's working night shifts at a warehouse, Linda's cleaning houses. They look exhausted." I'd paused, coffee cooling in my hands, picturing them. Dad's slumped shoulders, Mom's pinched frown. I'd seen it coming. They'd leaned on me like a crutch, never planning for a day without my checks. Ethan, I'd heard, lost his job, too lazy to keep it, while Caleb chased his influencer dreams, still broke. Their choices, not mine. I set the thought aside, turning back to the laughter around me. The city glittered beyond my window, a backdrop to this new life. Susan clinked her glass against mine, her smile a quiet anchor. Friends swapped stories, their presence a gift I hadn't earned with money. As the clock struck midnight, I stepped onto the balcony, the crisp air brushing my cheeks. The twinkling lights stretched across the skyline, and I felt it. Peace, unburdened by guilt trips or late-night calls. I'd built this, not them. Family wasn't the house I'd paid for, or the brothers who'd mocked me. It was Susan's pride, these voices echoing through my home, the stillness I'd claimed. Their will hadn't broken me. It had set me free. I sipped my wine, the cold glass grounding me. This was my Christmas, my terms, and it was more than enough. I sat in my armchair, the city lights flickering against the window, a kaleidoscope of motion beyond the glass. Inside, there was stillness, a quiet I'd never known, unbroken by ringing phones or desperate pleas. I sipped my wine, its warmth spreading through me, and let my mind drift. Once, I'd believed family was everything, that I owed them my life, every dollar, every sacrifice, no matter how they treated me. I'd convinced myself that if I gave enough, they'd see me, love me, but the truth had been colder, clearer. Michael and Linda had cut me from their will, a final stamp on my worth. Nothing, unless I paid. Ethan and Caleb had laughed, their cruelty a mirror to years of taking without giving. They'd thought it would break me, that I'd crawl back, begging for their scraps. Instead, it unshackled me. I'd walked away, not from family, but from a lie I'd lived too long. The apartment around me, once a stopover between their demands, was mine now. A space where no one else's burdens weighed me down. I thought of Florence, the cobblestone under my feet, Alex's easy smile. I thought of Susan's hug, the laughter of friends who stayed without asking for a dime. Family wasn't blood. It was those who saw me, not my bank account. Michael, Linda, Ethan, Caleb. They'd let me go, and I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd once lived for them, drained myself dry for their approval. Now, I live for me, and that wasn't selfish. It was freedom. My eyes settled on the phone, silent on the table. No missed calls, no guilt-laden texts. They'd faded, and I'd risen, stronger, freer, whole. I could travel, work, laugh, love, without a shadow demanding more. This life was mine to shape, and their absence was the greatest gift they'd given. I set the glass down, the city humming beyond, alive and indifferent. I was part of it now, not their anchor, but my own. Reagan's story, my story, isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's felt used, unseen, chained by duty. Family should lift you, not drain you. If they don't, you have every right to walk away, to choose yourself. I did, and under these lights, in this quiet, I found what they'd never offered. Peace. What about you? Would you keep giving or let go to find your own?